What up, friends? I see a few, and today we're going to be reviewing the newest album by Joey Valence and Brae, No Hands. This is the second studio album overall by indie hip-hop duo Joey Valence and Brae. While I didn't get around to reviewing their debut album Punk Tactics last year, they came out of the gate swinging. It was actually one of my favorite records of the year, bringing the Beastie Boys styled instrumentals and flows into the modern era, while also giving it a bit of a modern EDM twist, too. Their MO is being funny as hell over instrumentals that go hard as fuck, and they succeeded. You could tell these guys were just having fun. Even if their sound can be a bit derivative at times, they do it while also having their own personalities too. While this record doesn't quite reach the highs of their previous debut album, the new sounds that they bring to the table alongside refining the old sounds that they played with on their previous record help put it right behind Punk Tactics in terms of quality. Immediate banger alert with the first song on the album, BUSSIT. The drums are hard and fuzzy at the same time, incorporating both the hardcore and the EDM aspects of their sound. The flows are a gut punch, but also hilarious as Brae proudly exclaims that he's never done drugs and shouts out the DARE program. The flourishes of a drum and bass inspired sound that are kind of interjected throughout this track also help provide a good pace breaker for this opening part of the record. Next up we got Pack a Punch with fucking Danny Brown on this shit, bro. The beat on this is just one of the best on the project with the gritty drums and that off-kilter guitar. It's also much more confrontational in the lyrics with Brae basically telling his haters how they're Toad and he's Bowser. Joey also has some hilarious bars basically saying how his haters aren't Olivia because they don't got the guts, and also how he's pouring up so much sauce I think I was a fucking Stromboli in my past life. Danny's flow is also super fucking cool and feels right at home here. I also just like seeing Danny have fun on a track like this, especially with all the shit that he's been through and how he exclaims he's feeling like an Xbox lobby. Like, Danny is him, bro. The title track, No Hands, is also one of the best songs on the project, having a sort of old school, almost boom bap jazzy sound that is very reminiscent of something like Denzel Curry and what he did on his last record. The heavy focus on the somewhat melancholic scratching also kind of evokes something like Aesop Rock's Blood Sandwich too. The flows from the guys here are smooth and natural, really showcasing how they've basically made it here on their own with no other help. It's just them two, no label, them against the world. They got here on their own terms with their own skills. That horn sample is also a great way to showcase the relief that they feel now that they've kind of made it to the big leagues. The progression is great. It does so much for not even going to a 3-minute runtime. Like a Punk goes in the total opposite direction, being a total banger that's just perfect for a live setting. It might not be the deepest lyrically, but the gritty drums and the grungy guitar just make for a very in-your-face track that you just kind of want to go apeshit to. The way they weave in the EDM elements and the drop here just make this song just perfect for what it set out to do. And that purpose being throwing a fucking rager. Now, Where You From is probably one of the rare weaker moments of the project if I had to pick one. The beat is honestly pretty cool, having a sort of technological sound with the synth focus. The flows are bouncy and still have their humorous side, as Joey says, I feel like Michael Cera in his swag era, and having a cartoon crunch sound effect when he says, I eat the booty like a titan, I attack that. However, the chorus is kind of grating with its emphasis on the pitched vocals here. It's a trend that I've never really liked in pop songs, and it just doesn't really work here either. The beat also, while okay, doesn't hit as hard as the beats on the other songs on the project, making it sound a bit repetitive by the end of the song. It just kind of drags after a while. The Baddest is very similar to Like a Punk, however they take it in a more dance direction as opposed to the hardcore direction of Like a Punk. Despite not having that punk angle, the ethos of both tracks are largely very similar. It's purely made for a live setting. You're throwing a rager. That very anthemic sample that they got going on this track actually reminds me a lot of Perfect from Scaring the Hoes, that JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown project. Both of those tracks just kind of go crazy in their own ways. Like I said, this one was made for a live setting, so while it isn't the most complex song out there, it's a lot of fun. Also, Brae's all-black fit, Call Me Danny Phantom bar is just too hard. The next track, Okay, feels the most Beastie Boys inspired on the project, especially with the vocal inflections on their flows here. It's very bouncy and very quirky, which I think is just kind of the Beastie Boys ethos, especially later on in their career. The beat is punchy and dirty, but also really fun too. I love the combination of the horn samples and the drums to make an extremely confident anthem because these guys clearly got it on right now. Despite having a less maximalist beat like the other songs on the project, it's a bit shorter too, which helps prevent it from feeling like it drags on. It's short and sweet and doesn't overstay its welcome, which I think is perfect for a track like this. Doughboy is also one of the best songs on the project, following in Pack-a-Punch's footsteps and having a darker and more confident beat to it. The harp and grungy drums underneath the boys' flows and wordplay on this one also really add to that atmosphere. This is very fitting for the video game inspired lyrics on this track, all about getting loot in some sense, especially on lines like "I'm Master Chief, I master beats, and gold AR maxed on loot." Of course, Joey also throws in a "spent my last check on Pokemon" card, which is a bit too relatable. I love the way they interact with the vocal sample here as well, and Tara Reid's guest verse on this track also felt very at home, yet also had a different style flow to it that also made him stand out. What You Need is probably the weakest moment on the project, largely having the same issues as Where You From, but being even more simplistic. It's almost more of a house track, which kind of explains the repetitive lyrics and the sort of pulsating beat that this one has, but it just doesn't really work as well as the more punk-oriented songs that ends up feeling repetitive. It's just kind of one note compared to the other tracks which had a combination of punk, hip-hop, and EDM. It ends up feeling boring, which I feel isn't something that a track like this wants to be. Like, it's a dance track trying to be hype. I don't think the repetitiveness was intended. Conversely, John Cena feels like a better version of Where You From, and even though I still don't really like the pitched vocals here all that much, they do fit the more glitzy beat and vibe that this track has. The guys are basically just flexing their success here, and also talking about and bragging about how well they work together, kind of comparing them and their work process as playing a multiplayer game in split screen. The bars here are also very funny, especially when they really commit to that multiplayer video game theme, especially in lines like "I'm OP, my shell blue, your shell's green." OMNITRIX is the final song on the project and a great way to end the album overall, calling back to the sort of jazzy boom bap sound of the title track. The huge emphasis on the drums, strings, and horns are all very lush and vibrant. It really does feel like a victory lap for them. From referencing the greats like MF Doom, alongside being confident in their masculinity as they paint their nails, wear pink, and watch Marley and Me for a good cry, the guys really have just built up their success being themselves. Plus, they can always take solace in knowing that they have the hardest bars about Ben 10 in the game. This was just another solid outing by Joey Valence and Brae. They managed to evolve their sound a little bit further, distancing themselves from the Beastie Boys comparisons a little bit and also establishing more of their own sound. While still pulling from Beastie Boys, of course, the combination of that sound with the more modern EDM club banger styled instrumentals really help establish more of their own identity. I will say though that the quality is just a bit more consistent and has higher highs on their previous record Punk Tactics. Some of their experiments like on Where You From and What You Need just didn't really pan out as well as some of the others. Some songs also just don't really combine their hip-hop and EDM influences as well as other tracks. Songs like OK, while still good, do feel maybe a little bit less experimental or lush, or it just doesn't really blend as seamlessly. They can be occasionally a bit one note, I suppose. However, the wordplay is still hilarious, the flows are punchy and hard as hell, and the production on average is very unique and very experimental and has a lot of energy. They're a really creative duo, and I also really like how that extends to the features on this project as well, kind of going into genres that you may not expect them to on their own personal projects. With a bit of ironing out and focus, I feel like the next Joey Valence and Brae project could really be something special. They just have to continue what they're doing here, honing their sound and just getting even more creative with it. I'm feeling a decent 8 for No Hands by Joey Valence and Brae. Of course, we still have to talk about album covers on this show, and I actually really like this album cover a lot. It's so like tongue-in-cheek because, you know, it's clearly banking on this sort of like almost 2000s new metal styling and stuff like that, while also having the cheesiness of some like 80s and 90s hip-hop acts as well. The color scheme is actually really awesome. I love how saturated the colors are. It really fits the sort of like party banger and also just like creativity of the record as a whole. The poses are hilarious, you know. They are liars though. I do see some hands on the record, but I mean, the font is cool. The cover is cool. I love this cover. It's so stupid, but also so great. Of course, those are just my thoughts on this newest album by Joey Valence and Brae. What did you guys think? Do you think this is kind of an improvement on all fronts from their previous record? Or is it maybe a bit less consistent while also being good? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and I'll remove your hands. Wait, I'll do that if you don't ring the bell. How about that? That's my threat. And until the next one, farewell.